I would like to do my presentation in English since I have prepared it. Though I can speak in Hindi also properly, but I would like to go ahead with this presentation in English. Wherever possible, I will speak in Hindi as well. Uh, the topic of this entire the webinar is understanding various modes of tribal development, protecting their indigenous culture from external influence. Uh, it's a very important as well as relevant topic for the participating institutes, and primarily those institutes which would be carrying out their work in the tribal areas of central India primarily, because central India is a region wherein a large amount of tribal population resides, and this is also a region and the population which is sort of vulnerable to external influences. In my presentation, I would like to clarify on the structure of my presentation. What I would like to do is I would like briefly talk on this entire notion of indigenous people and the context of this notion or this idea in the Indian society, and how text would not fit in Indian context. This term, this notion of indigenousness or indigenous people would not fit in Indian context, and then uh, a sort of way forward or the context, that in which we are living in, or the things that we are experiencing and witnessing. First of all, the word indigenous people mean uh, such kind of people who are considered to be first peoples or first nations or aboriginal peoples or native peoples, and they are actually as described by the ILO, International Labour Organization, which also happens to be an international organization, which for the first time came up with the Indigenous Peoples Convention somewhere around, I suppose, in 1980s, at the beginning of the 1980s, and India hasn't signed this convention. This convention hasn't been signed by Indian government, saying that our context is different and this context doesn't fit in our social circumstances, our traditional ethos. That we will discuss later on. But the definition which is given by the ILO in relation to the indigenous people is, it says that groups that are usually described as indigenous when they maintain traditions or other aspects of early culture that is associated with a given region. Now, here in this context, we need to understand that these communities are the original or the earliest known inhabitants of that area. Original or earliest known inhabitants of that area, in contrast to the groups that have settled, occupied, colonized, or colonized these regions. Uh, I would like to give the definition of James Anaya. He was a former special rapporteur on rights of indigenous people. He said that his definition includes, says, living descendants of pre-invasion inhabitants, living descendants of pre-invasion inhabitants of land dominated by others. They are culturally distinct groups that find themselves engulfed by the other settler societies born of forces of empire or conquest. Now, in these definitions, what we will understand is the indigenousness primarily is the people who are the original inhabitants of that particular land and who have been conquered upon or invaded upon or have been subjugated or dominated upon. That we will have to understand in the context of Americas, that is primarily South America and the North America, and in Australia and to certain regions of Africa, wherein after industrial revolution and this entire process of colonial imperial practices started, uh, So these colonial powers of the Western Europe started exploring new regions in different parts of the world, including that of Asia, Africa, South America, and North America. For example, uh, as we know, in 1492, yes, that was in 1492, Columbus reached North Americas, and he conquered those lands. And what they did is they uh, they ethnically cleansed those local inhabitants. As in case of Peru and Mexico, there lived Aztec and then Inca civilizations, and these people belonging to these civilizations were ethnically cleansed, or some of them which were remaining people, they actually went into the forest and sought shelters to save themselves from the brutal ethnic cleansing or brutal conversion to their religion. Why this primarily happens? Because, in my understanding, the Semitic religions, the religions which are the Judaism, Christianity, and Islam in particular, these Semitic religions believe that they have found out the ultimate truth, and they and their prophet, whether it is Moses, uh, Jesus, or for that matter, the Prophet Muhammad, these were directly uh, evangelized by the God Himself, or they were told the truth, the final truth, ultimate truth by the God themselves. And the other people who do not adhere to this philosophy are heathens. They consider them as heathenic people or heathens, and they are not aware of the truth. They are living in ignorance, and they need to be brought out of that ignorance or that darkness, that blindness, and that is why they need to be converted into the Semitic religions. Primarily, the one which is at the forefront of all these activities is the Christianity. And uh, just now we referred to the industrial level, the process of industrial revolution, and after that industrial revolution, this colonial expansion which started in different parts of the world, North America, South America, Australia, and Africa. In all these regions, uh, the colonial expansion allow the colonial expansion actually robbed the indigenous people of their resources. Not only that, that also ethnically cleansed them. Not only that, they also convert some of those people who remain alive out of all these brutalities. They were either converted, or some of them, to save themselves from all these brutalities, they went and sought shelters in the inaccessible areas. Now, at the advent of the 19th of the 20th century in particular, when this world wars one after another, and then entire this colonial practices were being questioned upon, and this then United the League of Nations, and then United Nations, and then this economic trusteeship council, and the world opinion around this area of decolonizing and giving the rights of self determination to these peoples. So these people now started coming and started intermingling with these colonizers of these white colonizers, and these white colonizers then started coming in, and they started demanding for their rights. Now, to address their rights or their resentment, for the first time, the International Labor Organization came up with a convention of world indigenous people. And in 1993, the United Nations decided, the year 1993 was decided as the year of indigenous people. And from 1994 to 2004, and from 2005 to then 2014. So the 2 decades were celebrated under the auspices of United Nations. These 2 decades were celebrated as the decades of indigenous people. And a resolution was passed on 23rd of December 1994, and 9th of August of each year was decided to be celebrated as World Indigenous Peoples Day. This is entire context of in the notion of indigenousness, and its historical context primarily in the colonized regions, primarily in North America, South America, Africa, and certain parts of Asia and Australia also. On the other hand, initially I mentioned why India did not sign uh, the, uh,
So there is a small request from
the
technical team. Please lift up the mic little bit so for better sound quality. Yeah, please, sir. Thank you,
okay,
sir.
okay. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, yeah.
Hello.
Yes, sir.
Yeah,
Perfect.
I'm speaking louder, and even this mic is very close to my my
Yeah,
mouth.
now it's working
I don't
fine, sir.
know.
Thank you, sir. Yeah.
Yeah, it's
All right.
better.
Okay.
It's good. Please
Okay.
continue.
Can you hear me now properly? Okay. Yes.
Yes, we
So,
can.
so I tried to give you the context of this in the notion of indigenousness, this context of indigenous people, and how that came about in somewhere around in 1993 under the auspices of the United Nations. Uh, for the first time, as I said, in December 1990, the year 1993 was celebrated as the year of United Nations as the World Indigenous Peoples Year, and that resolution was passed by United Nations General Assembly. And I also said that from 1994 to 2000, and then from 2005 to 2014, the 2 decades were also celebrated as World Indigenous Peoples Decade. And then, as I said, on 23rd of December 1994, from that year onward, each year, 9th of August is celebrated as World Indigenous Peoples Day. As I said earlier, why India did not sign the convention, the convention on World Indigenous People, for the simple reason that the context of India is completely different. We do not have anybody who has invaded or who have ethnically cleansed primarily at least that community till the aggression of Islam or invasion of Islamic invasion, and later on the British East India Company and the British invasion and the European powers invasion, the Portuguese, French, British, and then uh, much in the seventh century, 712. From that time onwards, the Islamic invasions in India. But prior to that, we do not have any evidence of the somebody coming from outside invading here or subjugating the indigenous people here and drawing them to the hills or forests. That is why ये कहा जाता है कि कौन आदि है सब अनादि है. Or now here in India, till the Islamic invasion, we certainly can say that everybody who lived here is anadi, who is if we have to consider them as indigenous people, then we must accept that every one of us is an indigenous person. Now, what is this? What has this indigenous? The notion of indigenous people has led to. It has created sense of binary. It has created sense of binary between the invaders and this invaded upon, the people who have been invaded upon, the somebody who has come from outside and somebody who is the original inhabitant. In Indian context, every one of us is inhabitant, original inhabitant, and that is why we did not sign on that. For to put my point and to put in the Indian government's point and our notion also, that for ages the notions in relation God, soul, living species, life or death, afterlife, etc. These notions have always been there in the mainland, the communities which have been living on the plains, and also in the communities which have been dwelling in the forest or hills. And uh, the notions of worshipping motherland or mother earth are very much there in the tribal communities in India as they exist in the mainland communities. And that is why we say that Nagarvasi, Gramavasi, Vanavasi, generally the Vanavasis or Janajatis, or even the tribal people. The Nagarvasi, Gramavasi, or Vanavasi, hum sab Bharatwasi. So there has always been this cultural exchange. There has always there are so many commonalities, coinciding points between the traditions, cultural ethos, or what are the traditional values, wisdom, which are in anthropological terms uh, called as intangible heritage. The intangible heritage of the tribal culture of the tribal people in India, and the intangible heritage of the mainland dwelling people, they are common. There are so many coinciding points. If in most of the tribal communities, the notions in relation to the purusharthas, that is dharma, artha, kama, moksha, or even for that matter, this varnashram vyavastha, grahasthashrama, the brahmacharya ashram, grahasthashram, vanaprasthashram, and then sannyasashram. The notions, if not exactly called that, the certain notions are common among the forest dwelling communities or tribal communities and the plain dwelling communities, वो नगरवासी और ग्रामवासियों के बीच की जो भी ये संकल्पनाएं हैं. Importantly, and then in recently what is being said, or some of the scholars portray the tribal communities in India as the animists by religion, or their faith, animistic faith, or tribal faith or tribal religion. And recently some of them have even started demanding for a different religious code in the census. So now this notion is primarily animistic religion, or the tribal religion worships nature because they worship nature. But the worshipping nature, or worshipping every non-living most of the non-living objects, is a cultural ethos which is a hallmark of Indian society. For example, the worship of Pancha Mahabhut, which we have in our traditions, in our philosophy, that is Vayu, Jal, Agni, Dharti, Akash. The mainland society, or in Hindu philosophy, or for other philosophies also for that matter, Jain philosophy, Buddhist philosophy, Hindu philosophy, in all these philosophies, the Pancha Mahabhutas, Vayu, Jal, Agni, Dharti, Akash, all these things have been traditionally worshipped. They have been offered prayer to for ages. This is not for the first time. So the practice of worshipping nature has always existed in tribal communities, as well as in the mainland communities or the plain dwelling communities. If we go back, if we also try to look at some of our epics, which we consider to be the cornerstones of our cultural values, our philosophy, that's Ramayana, Mahabharata, then Vedas, then some Puranas, certain Brahmanas, and all these books. What we will come to know is that in Ramayana we know the example of Mata Shabri. She offers sweet fruits to Lord Ram, and Lord Ram also eats those fruits with equal, the love and affection, and the sense of reverence. We also have known that the lot of tribal kingdoms participated or joined Lord Rama's fight against Ravana. We also have the anecdotes of Vali and Sugriv being some of the prosperous and glorious kingdoms in the Ramayana. So is the case with Mahabharata also. In Mahabharata, there are romantic explanations or anecdotes of how tribal kingdoms, various tribal kingdoms, kings and emperors and princes participated in the final battle of Mahabharata. Not only that, Bhima married Hidimba, and Hidimba is considered to be a tribal princess. So, and then Eklavya is there. The explanation, the description of Eklavya is there in Mahabharata. During Chandragupta Maurya's time, also the army called Atvika army, which used to have elephants in it, used to consist the tribal warriors, and if we know in our history, when Alexander invaded India, and when he was entering into India, he was coming through the Khyber Pass, I suppose, and then when he was entering into India, the first ones who faced him were the tribal kingdoms, tribal warriors, tribal princes. So there has always been a cultural exchange between the tribal kingdoms and the tribal people and the mainland dwelling people. Not only that, in Vedas, there is a description of Panchajana, the five people, पांच जनों की जो बात की हुई है वहां पर, the Panchajanas. One of the last jana, the fifth jana, was Nishad, and Nishad was a tribal king or a person who came from the tribal community, somebody representing tribal community, and all these five people, the Panchajanas, had equal stake in decision making, or they exercised equal rights in entire, decision making, or whenever certain resolution was being passed. That therefore, Dr. Ghurye, Dr. Ghurye, a renowned sociologist, in his book has written that though for the sake of though for the sake of convenience, they may be designated as the tribal classes of Hindu society, suggesting thereby the social fact that they have retained much more of the tribal creeds and organization than many of the castes of Hindu society. This sentence is important. They have retained much more of the tribal creeds and organization than many of other castes of Hindu society, yet they in reality are backward Hindu. So this is the observation of Ghurye. Not only that, now we also have examples when the most of the kingdoms which have been described in Ramayana, Mahabharata, or most of the communities which were described as the tribal communities during the times of Ramayana, Mahabharata, or Vedic time, or even for that matter during the invasion of Alexander, comparatively, a modern time, and even Chandragupta Maurya's time, most of those tribal communities do not exist now. Means what? Those communities migrated or intermixed with the mainland communities. And another important thing to note is that when Islamic invasion happened and when Islam became the ruling religion of India, most of the Hindu kings and kingdoms and warriors did not want to surrender, did not want to be the slaves of Islamic rulers in India. So what they did was they sought shelter in the forest, deep forests and hills, and over a period of time, they themselves became the tribal rulers. For example, in the morning I was reading some Pahadveer. The Pahadveer means certain Chauhan kings who migrated from Rajasthan, who fought alongside Maharana Pratap, who migrated from Rajasthan to the Pahads of the Satpura ranges, the mountain ranges. And over a period of time, this Pahadveer becomes Padvi. Now, these Padvis in the Satpura ranges are they come in the tribal community. So there has always been this migration, intermixation, and that is why this absoluteness of this the other communities which are non-tribal communities are non-indigenous, and only tribal communities are indigenous is, I think, is misplaced notion which doesn't fit in Indian context. This is one of the reasons why India did not sign on the World Indigenous Peoples Convention by ILO, and we have made same submissions in United Nations as well. We also need to understand this Indian philosophy, the hallmark of Indian philosophy, primarily as we initially discussed, the Semitic religions, the Semitic religions believe that they have found out the truth of final. Their prophet was told the truth by God himself, and that is why everybody must adhere to their way of thought. If you do not, then either you are ignorant, you are blind, or you are arrogant. And if you do not convert to their way of thinking, their faith, you either would be made to do so by force or by inducement. In the central part of India today, the activities in relation to the conversion, the various conversion related activities that are taking place in the central part of India are, since we are a democracy,
हेलो।
हाँ राहुल, बोलो।
हाँ, स्पीकर के साइड से थोड़ा सा वो बैंडविड्थ इशू है, आई गेस।
ओके।
या
वीडियो ऑफ करने को बोलिए उन्हें, मे बी ओनली ऑडियो विल हेल्प।
जी जी।
हाँ हाँ। हेलो हेलो।
यस सर,
आवाज
यू
आ
आर
रही है?
ऑडिबल।
Sir,
हाँ
I
सर, आ
have
रही है
just
आवाज।
talked. I have just talked to him,
हाँ हाँ।
and he is checking for the bandwidth.
ओके ओके। तो ऐसा है कि दो बहुत ही अच्छी जानकारी हमको रही। वो दोनों ही जो स्पीकर हमारे रहे हैं, विवेकानंद जी और इसको आगे लेते हुए हमको ये डिलिब्रेट करना है कि किस तरह से जो आदिवासी जीवन दर्शन है, जो उनका तरीका है, उनकी संस्कृति को हम किस तरह से सुचारू रूप से आगे ले जा सकते हैं उन्नत भारत के माध्यम से, और किस तरह से हमारी पार्टिसिपेटिंग इंस्टीट्यूशन जो अभी फोकस हो गया है एस्पिरेशनल डिस्ट्रिक्ट्स के ऊपर। तो सेक्रेटरी एमएचआरडी ने भी हमसे जब चर्चा की अभी थोड़े दिन पहले, तो उनका फोकस भी है कि उन्नत भारत अभियान को फोकस करके पर्टिकुलरली एस्पिरेशनल डिस्ट्रिक्ट्स में बहुत अच्छे से काम करना है। तो इन सारे डिस्ट्रिक्ट्स में जो हमारे पार्टिसिपेटिंग इंस्टीट्यूट्स हैं, सबकी ये रेस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी और ड्यूटी हो जाती है कि इन जो हमारे जनजातीय क्षेत्र हैं, जो लोग हैं वहाँ पे, जो गांव हैं जिनको हमने अडॉप्ट किया हुआ है, वहाँ पे हम कुछ मॉडल करके ऐसा दिखाएं जो पूरे देश एक मॉडल के रूप में बन जाए। तो ये जो डिस्ट्रिक्ट मेनली, इसमें तीन तरह के एरियाज हैं। एक तो जो मध्य प्रदेश, झारखंड और उड़ीसा और छत्तीसगढ़। दूसरा जो नॉर्थ ईस्ट का एरिया है, वहाँ के आदिवासी जनजाति क्षेत्र। और एक जो फिर इधर दक्षिण राजस्थान में है और महाराष्ट्र में है। तो इन अलग अलग क्षेत्रों में जो अलग अलग तौर तरीके हैं, जो वहाँ की परिस्थितियाँ हैं, वहाँ की स्पेशलिटी है, उनके हिसाब से उनकी लाइवलीहुड को, उनके जो कल्चर है उसको हम किस तरह से प्रोटेक्ट कर सकते हैं, उसी उसके डायरेक्शन में हम किस तरह से आगे बढ़ सकते हैं। और इन चीज़ों को लेते हुए अभी जो जो सरकार की भी ये मान्यता है टीचर, और इनको आगे रखते हुए इसके लिए जो उदाहरण है, हम हर्ष जी को सुनना चाहेंगे, जो कि ऑलरेडी झाबुआ क्षेत्र में समग्र जो हमारा उनका जो ऑर्गेनाइजेशन है उसको लेके और उनके विकास को किस तरह से एक परिलक्षित किया है, वो देखने लायक है, जानने लायक है। आईआईटी बॉम्बे, आईआईटी दिल्ली और भी कई सारे इंस्टीट्यूशंस के स्टूडेंट्स वहाँ पे जाते हैं, रहते हैं, समझते हैं, आगे बढ़ा रहे हैं। तो हर्ष जी जो हो गए हैं शायद, मैं उनसे आग्रह करूंगा कि वो अपनी बात रखें।
मैं थोड़ा सा परिचय दे देता हूँ हर्ष जी का।
हाँ हाँ।
हर्ष चौहान जी का एजुकेशनल बैकग्राउंड मैं पहले बता देता हूँ आप लोगों को। तो हर्ष जी ने बीई मैकेनिकल इंजीनियरिंग किया है SGSITS इंदौर से, जो कि मध्य प्रदेश का सबसे पुराना इंजीनियरिंग कॉलेज है। फिर उन्होंने IIT दिल्ली से सिस्टम्स एंड मैनेजमेंट में एमटेक किया है। हर्ष जी ने इसके साथ बैचलर्स ऑफ जर्नलिज्म एंड मास कम्युनिकेशन देवी अहिल्या विश्वविद्यालय इंदौर से किया है। इसके बाद हर्ष जी का सामाजिक जीवन प्रारंभ हुआ और सामाजिक कार्यों से हर्ष जी प्रारंभ से जुड़े रहे। तो वनवासी कल्याण आश्रम के साथ 1992 से एज स्टेट सेक्रेटरी और प्रेसिडेंट मध्य प्रदेश ऐसे इस कार्यभार के साथ जुड़े रहे। और अभी वर्तमान में हर्ष जी अखिल भारतीय वनवासी कल्याण आश्रम के नेशनल एग्जीक्यूटिव के मेंबर भी हैं। इसके अतिरिक्त हर्ष जी की कल्पना रही शिव गंगा समग्र विकास परिषद झाबुआ, जो उनका प्रकल्प है, उसके फाउंडर मेंबर रहे हर्ष जी। और ये जो जिसके बारे में अभी प्रोफेसर VK विजय ने भी जिसका जिक्र किया, शिव गंगा समग्र ग्राम विकास परिषद झाबुआ, जो दिस इज एन एम्पावरमेंट मूवमेंट फॉर ट्राइबल पीपल ऑफ झाबुआ फॉर सस्टेनेबल डेवलपमेंट। तो ऐसा एक बड़ा आंदोलन खड़ा हुआ है झाबुआ में। तो उसको हर्ष जी पूरा पोषित कर रहे हैं, उसको अपना समर्थन देते हैं, अपना पूरा समय देते हैं। तो हर्ष जी को हम लोग आमंत्रित करते हैं। या विवेकानंद जी जुड़े हैं क्या वापस?
मैं जुड़ गया हूँ, लेकिन अगर आप
हाँ।
हर्ष जी को अगर हर्ष
नहीं, यदि आपका वक्तव्य बीच में है तो उसको कंटिन्यू कर सकते हैं, यदि बैंडविड्थ की
मैं
प्रॉब्लम।
5 मिनट में कंक्लूड कर दूं मैं।
जी जी, बेहतर है। हर्ष जी, मुझे लगता है कि आपको बाद में लेते हैं, एक बार
ठीक है ठीक है
जी जी
ठीक है, बिल्कुल।
जी जी
ठीक। So what I was trying to put was this, that Indian philosophy essentially believes in the unity with the unity and wishes that everybody has a way and everybody can reach to God. There is no particular way. It primarily believes in finding the truth, searching the truth, and the truth can be the reach to that truth, reach to that God, reach to that the truth that is called God, the Parmeshwar, Parmeshthi. There can be many other ways. So that is why we never had any sort of imposition or domination or subjugation on this land. Whereas and also previously, as we historically also discussed, that there have been so many examples, so many evidences that we can come across when these cultural exchanges have taken place between the forest dwelling or hills dwelling or the plain dwelling or Nagarvasi, Gramavasi, between these people. So there is not much of difference. Now, where has this now recently we have come across many such things in which certain ideas, certain schools of thought, and certain activists or certain NGOs and certain civil society movements are raising their voice or saying that the tribal people in India are different from that of Hindus. Some of them have started so vigorously and vociferously demanding for their rights, for the for their separate religious code and separate representation and many other things. The constitutional representation is a different thing altogether. There is a provision of it. We also have the PESA Act, Panchayat Extension to Scheduled Areas Act 1996, and also the Forest Rights Act and other such acts which try to try to uh, try to address the issues in relation to the intangible heritage that we talked about, their cultural values, their ethos, their traditions, their wisdom. But then there are other notions, development related notions. Both these issues, the intangible heritage as well as the development related issues, both are being tackled by various policies. Much has been done and much more needs to be done, and there cannot be any doubt about it. But the sense of alienation or the sense of differentness or the sense of separateness that is being created between the Hindus and the tribal community, saying that the tribal people are not, they are different culture and they have different value system. Altogether, there are no coinciding points between these two communities. Is totally misplaced or ill-conceived, ill-intentioned idea and the movement. For that, I would like to cite primarily two things have become so active, so rampant. The activities which have become so active and so rampant in the central part of India primarily. The evangelical missions in India is one such group, and also along with them certain civil society groups are being fed by certain Western fed notions. And another one, as Rajivji also talked so elaborate, and that is Maoists or the left-wing extremists in this country, the left-wing extremism in the evangelical missions primarily aim to disconnect them from their cultural values, their ethos, so that they can have fertile ground for their conversion-related or evangelical activities. Most of these evangelical missions believe that India is a ripened fruit and that needs to be harvested before it becomes too late. And for their activities to be carried out, they identify the central India as an important region. Because howsoever they have tried or endeavored so hard so far, they haven't become so successful in this part. They haven't so massively converted people in Christianity as they have been able to. I think in some of the northeastern states of India. To that extent, that hasn't taken place in the central part of India. The Maoists, to realize the proletariat revolution, they are trying to create the sense of alienation or sense of differentness among the minds of these tribal people, so that they can have their they can draw their cadre from the foot soldiers. Since I myself come from one of the remotest areas, and mostly this left-wing extremism activities affected areas, I understand the foot soldiers are primarily drawn from the tribal community, whereas the other people, the higher class, the commanders and the Politburo members and all those decision-making persons come from generally from other states, from well-off communities, primarily upper caste. This is also a fact which cannot be ignored. So now to realize their goal of doing a massive conversion in the central India, they want to build an alliance with the Maoists. Since Maoists do not have enough resources, primarily money, so money can be funded to them by the missionary activities. So this is an alliance of convenience which has created sense of alienation, sense of separateness, differentness among in the minds of the tribal community. To cite this, I would like to give one or two examples, and then I will end. The Pathalgari movement, in particular, in Jharkhand, Kunti, then Singhbhum, and then Chaivasa, and some of these districts. The Pathalgari movement actually has misconstrued the provisions of the PESA. PESA in 1996 was created, was drafted to give certain amount of autonomy for their own initiatives, for their own development, and ensure their own participation in their entire development process, or also to ensure their participation in the democratic process. And then, to create awareness about it, certain activists, in B.D. Sharma was among them, one amongst them. They to raise or to create awareness about the provisions of the PESA Act, they started raising stones at the entrance of the village, stating what are the provisions and what can be done, and what are the functions of the Gram Sabha. So such provisions were noted or written on that stone. But certain people who actually have fallen prey to the missionary activities, and those who have fallen prey to the preachings of some of these left-wing extremist ideologies, have started claiming that they do not adhere to India's constitution. They do not recognize India as their nation. They are autonomous, and they are a nation unto themselves. We don't. They say that we do not abide by the civil and the criminal law of this country. We do not recognize the judiciary. We recognize nothing, and we will not allow the government officials or anybody coming from outside. So, sort of, the republics unto themselves, they have started creating that. In this, whoever have opposed their activities, they have either killed them or have subjugated them. For example, in the Singhbhum district of Jharkhand, on 21st of January 2020, some 11 people were kidnapped for not adhering to the dictates of these Pathalgari activists, and then they were later killed. Similarly, in the year 2008, 5 women who were doing a street play in order to create awareness among people against the trafficking, the human trafficking that so largely takes place in the state of Jharkhand. So they were doing a street play to create awareness against the human trafficking. But these women were kidnapped, they were raped, and such activities have taken place. Recently, we have also seen the killing of sadhus in Palghar district in the state of Maharashtra.